This story happened right as I was starting to get out on my own. I had just graduated college and accepted a new job in a new city. To take away the stress of bills, I decided to get a roommate. After months of nothing, I turned to Craigslist. I wasn't super thrilled at the idea, but I severely underestimated my expenses, and I was beginning to panic. Finally, I arranged to meet with a girl who was around my age. After talking for a day or two, we learned that we had a ton in common, even moving to a new place and new jobs. During the meeting, she was very shy. She was friendly, but definitely not an extrovert by any means. We talked for a good while, and nothing stuck out to me as a red flag. She seemed like she was just a typical woman who was trying to make it. I offered her the room and she agreed, moving in that weekend. At first, things were fine. She was helpful, kept her space tidy, and bills were taken care of on time. It wasn't until 2 months in that things took a turn for the worse. It was a subtle shift. She started to lose touch of personal boundaries. I would be with my boyfriend in my room with the door shut, and she would barge in without even announcing. If friends were over, she would stay under our feet the entire time. If we wanted to go out, she would ask to join. Then it progressed to her being irrationally upset if I came home late from work or a night out. Getting annoyed, I talked to her and filed it in the back of my mind thinking it would be fine. It wasn't. My things kept going missing. Not just normal things either. My underwear, bras, and toothbrushes would just vanish. Then, the last 2 incidents were enough to send me over the edge. The first incident happened when I came home from work early. Inside the house, things were silent. I knew she was here because of her car, and I thought she was just sleeping. What I didn't know, but soon found out, was she was asleep, just in my bed instead of hers. I woke her up as soon as I registered it, and she apologized that it wouldn't happen again. I was beginning to get a bad vibe from her that just kept getting darker. Then, that same night, I went to bed like usual. I briefly woke up in the middle of the night because of a noise and realized she was watching me. I yelled at her to get out and locked my door, putting an accent chair under the knob for good measure. Still creeped out, I barely slept the rest of the time. I could hear her rifling around in her room until it went quiet around 3 a.m. Since I had been up all night, I waited until she went to work the next day and decided I was going to find out what exactly was going on with my roommate. Now, I'm not normally the type to snoop, but I felt this urge to go into her room and have a look. Her room was neat, everything in its place. I took time looking at pictures, and it was odd that she didn't have any with her in them, not even family pictures. None of the pictures were of anybody at all. It was all pictures of landscaping, random spots of grass and trees. It reminded me of mediocre photography. I made my way to her closet next, assuming if I had important things that they would be in there. The first glance revealed it was messy, unlike her room. Then, there in a pile that was hidden under towels, stood a mountain of my clothes. I dug through, realizing that the only article of clothing that was missing from this pile was my undergarments. Beyond freaked out, I ravaged the rest of her room until I accidentally bumped into her nightstand, and an envelope that had tape on it hit the floor. My hands were shaking as I opened the flap and dropped the photos onto the floor. The photos were of me. In some, I was showering. In others, I was sleeping. Even pictures of me leaving work were all there. Completely scared, I began to back out of the room until I saw something keeping her mattress barely a centimeter off the box spring. Now that I saw the pictures, I was already expecting the worst, afraid it was my undergarments or more pictures. My finding under the mattress was confusing, but eerie. Stuffed under the mattress were 4 licenses. All the ID cards had different names, but the same picture of my roommate wearing this demented grin. Something told me that these ID cards meant nothing good, and that I needed to do something with them. When I got them to my room and started checking the names, I discovered that the names were of women who were missing. After I calmed down, I took the cards directly to the police station. I explained the situation, and since I had the cards, they believed me. I told them that my roommate was at work and she would be back soon. We decided the best plan was to confront her at home, and I went back to wait for her. When she came inside, cop cars wailed and lit up the road outside. She turned and looked at me when she heard them, giving me this creepy, dead eyes smirk. I still remember what she said to me when she left. "Guess that's my ride." Those were the last words she said to me. I still don't know what came of the women on the ID cards, or what she had done to expect police. But I also think I don't want to know. Craigslist has never been my favorite site to use, but after being fired from my job, I was struggling to find work, so I thought I would give Craigslist another try. I was willing to do anything at this point, but I found one ad that was offering multiple jobs on a newly purchased house. The job description read something like, "All-round handyman wanted for decorating, gardening, and other miscellaneous tasks." I'm a joiner by trade, so I'm pretty good with my hands. I contacted the advertiser, who I'll call Reese, and once I told him of my experience, he told me he would pay me $100 a day cash, and it would be a minimum of 2 weeks' work, but I could be working up to 12-hour days, depending on the task for that day. I agreed, and after meeting Reese, he told me he would give me a one-day trial to see if I would be a good fit. I turned up on Monday and met Reese at the house. He walked me around the house and then said he was going to start me out in the garden. He gave me a list of what needed to be done and said if I finished it all that same day, he would hire me for the rest of the work. I worked my ass off that day, and at about 9 p.m. after the sun had gone down, I had completed everything on the list. Reese came out to check my work and said he never thought I would actually get it done, and that he just wanted to see how hard I could work. He offered me the job and gave me an envelope with $100 in it. "See you in the morning, 8 a.m., he said as he walked back into the house. The next morning, I arrived bright and early, and Reese gave me a list of things that needed doing that day. About 12 p.m., Reese came and asked if I wanted any lunch. "Hey, I'm going out for a bite to eat. You want me to bring you something back? It's on me." I said I was okay, as I had brought some food with me. Once Reese had left, I started to relax a little. Although he left me to get on with it, I felt like he was constantly watching me. About 10 minutes after Reese had left, I heard a thud upstairs. As far as I was aware, there was no one else in the house. I thought nothing more of it and carried on with whatever job I was doing at the time. Then I heard it again. This time it was more distinct, and it definitely sounded like someone was up there. I decided to go and check it out. I went upstairs cautiously. It wasn't really my business, but I was thinking that maybe someone climbed in through a window. But after looking around, I couldn't find anyone, or even find anything that would explain the sound I heard. As I made my way back downstairs, I heard it again. It sounded like it came from the master bedroom. I went in cautiously and looked around, checking under the bed, when I noticed a sheet hanging up in the corner of the room. I pulled it back to reveal a closet door. My heart sank, and I trembled, thinking that maybe something, or more likely someone, was in here. I took a deep breath and opened the closet door, and I'm glad to report that there was no one in there. I did, however, notice a small wooden box on the floor, which seemed out of place, seeing as though there was nothing else in there. I know it wasn't really my place to snoop, but I was curious as to why there would be a single box in the closet, which was hidden by a sheet. I opened the box and found a pile of photographs, maybe about 24 in total. I don't want to say what these photographs were, but I will tell you that no one should ever be in possession of these types of photographs. No one that doesn't have a sick mind anyway. I heard the front door to the house close, and Reese shouted my name. I put the box back and tried to make it look as though I hadn't touched the sheet. I came out of the bedroom as Reese was coming up the stairs. He stared at me. "Everything okay? Why are you in my bedroom?" I explained that I had heard something and thought it might be someone trying to break in through a back window, but couldn't find anything. As I walked past Reese, he moved to the side to block my way and looked right into my eyes as though he didn't trust me, or to look into my soul to see if I knew something. I kind of stuttered nervously. I best get back to work." Reese moved out of my way, and I took a deep breath as I walked down the stairs. I knew Reese was full on watching me as I walked away, and I certainly didn't feel safe being there anymore. I tried to think of a way that I could leave and just not come back without giving it away that I knew what secrets were hiding in that closet. I wasn't smart enough to come up with anything that didn't sound like a blatant lie. Eventually, I finished my work for the day, and when I said goodbye to Reese, he handed me an envelope with $200 in it and said, "You did a good job today. There's a little something extra in there for you for all your hard work, but let's keep that between us." I thanked him and made my way home. Once I got home, I was unsure what to do. I wanted to call the police, but I was scared I might get into trouble for looking around his house without permission. Anyways, I decided to call the police and let them know what I found. I felt it was more important to deal with the content of those photos, even if it did mean I landed in trouble as well. The police said they would look into it. I decided I didn't want to work for Reese, and I didn't want his hush money, so I returned the extra $100 and put it in his mailbox. I sent a message to Reese the next day, saying that I was no longer able to work for him. I don't know if anything ever came from my statement to the police, but I hope I never see that guy again.
Let me tell you the story of how I developed social anxiety disorder. I used to work night shifts, so I sleep during the daytime, and a few years ago I woke up to some pretty terrible news. I had a bunch of missed calls and unread text messages from my landlord. They were telling me to call them as soon as possible. I called my landlord and he tells me that there's a leak in the apartment downstairs, one that they figured was coming from my apartment. As a result, they'd shut off the water to my apartment while I was asleep. That meant no shower, no coffee. I couldn't even flush my own toilet. The only consolation was that I'd found a plumber to find and fix the leak, and he'd reimburse me the money if I kept a receipt or invoice. Now, it's already around 3 in the afternoon when I learned the news about the water being shut off, which was obviously coming up to the end of most people's working days. I knew of a few emergency plumbers who might be able to deal with the problem at short notice, but all of them seemed to be too busy to take the job. I ended up calling around to a few friends to see if I could stay at their place until the problem was dealt with, and luckily, one of my girlfriends was more than willing to take me in. But she also threw me a kind of Hail Mary suggestion as to where I could find someone who wasn't a pro, but knew enough about plumbing to be able to come over and help. Craigslist. I didn't think it'd be much help. I figured most people would just use it to sell stuff and organize seedy hookups or whatever. But then again, I hadn't actually visited the site all that much, and to my surprise, there was a section of the services part of the site that was called Household. Then, what do you know? The third post down said something like, 37-year-old handyman looking for work, with the post saying how he knew a little about everything and would take jobs at short notice at really low prices. It seemed way too good to be true, and I suppose that's because it was. I give the guy a call on the number he'd included in his post and explain the situation to him. Honestly, I expected that he'd give me the "sorry, too busy" line that all the others had. You'd think they'd at least arrange a time to take the job. But no, he seemed only too happy to drive out to me that evening to see if he could shut off the leaky pipe, then go turn my water back on. I was literally like, all my prayers had been answered. The guy even said it himself that it sounded like a relatively simple job, and he was amazed another plumber hadn't come out already to just open up the floorboards, close off the pipe, then turn the water back on. I knew absolutely nothing about it, so when he said opening up the floorboards or whatever, and how that was a simple process, I just totally ate it up. About an hour or so after I'd made the first phone call, the guy shows up to my apartment and tells me he's outside. I realized that I'd totally forgotten to tell him which apartment I was in, so I let him know and I buzz him in. The guy then shows up at my door looking totally legit, and I show him into the bathroom, which was where the landlord thought the leak was coming from. I then went back to my TV room and carried on preparing my very late breakfast. Remember, I worked night shifts at the time. A few minutes later, the guy, who called himself Tony, calls me into the bathroom and says something like, "Does this look right to you?" I then walk towards the bathroom, stick my head around the door to take a peek, and that's the last thing I remember. The next thing I know, there's a bright light in front of me, and I groggily realize that it's coming from the little pen flashlight of an EMT checking if I'm responsive or not. I start panicking, asking what's going on, and they tell me to keep still while they get a stretcher up to my apartment. They put me on it, wheel me out into the hallway outside, and there's the friend who had agreed to let me stay at her place. She's in tears, asking the EMT if I'm going to be okay, and I remember just relaxing and sinking into the stretcher when I heard them say yes. I just felt like I wanted to sleep for days, but when I told the EMTs that I was feeling tired and could I just nap while they were driving me to the hospital, they kept telling me to stay awake, to do anything I could to stay awake. In the end, they kept asking me these dumb small talk style questions to just keep me talking. Then at the hospital, I'm pretty sure they gave me something to keep me from drifting off because apparently falling asleep with a head injury can actually be fatal. And not long after, the cops showed up to take a statement about the plumber guy from me. They'd gone through my place and found a bunch of valuables missing. Obvious stuff too, like the TV being gone from the mount on the wall, all my jewelry gone, with my bedroom completely ransacked. Only then did I actually put two and two together and realize what had happened. That wasn't a plumber at all. He hadn't even touched anything in my bathroom. He just used the whole handyman thing as a front to rob people. One of the cops told me that I was the fourth person to get robbed by the same handyman guy that month, only because he uses different phone numbers and never told anyone much about himself. They hadn't been able to track him down. As far as I know, they never caught the guy. He just pulled a few robberies, then quit when the public got a warning about hiring anonymous handymen on the internet. Maybe he's still out there, robbing people, doing his thing, switching it up and not getting caught. And I hope those other people he'd robbed and beat got over what happened to him. But I didn't. Like I said, I developed a serious anxiety disorder after the attack, and it hit me in a way I just didn't expect. Bad things happen to good people sometimes, I know that, and I took a lot of comfort in knowing that the cops were at least closing the net around the guy. But then after I got out of the hospital, it must have been like 2 or 3 days before I realized I hadn't even left the house. I got nervous getting food from the delivery guys that dropped it off at my apartment building, but I figured that feeling would just go away after a while. Only, it didn't. I got this tight feeling in my chest, this itchy feeling all over me, whenever anyone I didn't know walked outside my apartment or outside in the hallway. I still sometimes find myself running to the people with the gun I bought, staring through the little glass circle and just waiting to see the face of the guy who robbed me on the other side. I know I'm never going to see it either, but I still find myself doing it. I got a nasty little scar on my jawline from where the guy hit me, and even the EMTs said I must have had a steel skeleton or something because it's a miracle my jaw wasn't broken. But I guess I got a lot of scars that people can't see, along with a wound that I'm not sure will ever properly heal.